So, hello and welcome to the 1% podcast. Today we have Mr. Tim Wright on. Now, by all accounts, I say this a lot, but I mean it. Tim is an absolute legend. We've been working together for nearly 9-10 weeks now, and I think Tim's absolutely flying, smashing it on all fronts, and I want you guys to hear about that. Also, Tim's story is a powerful one because it hasn't always been great, and this stuff he's worked through and we're continuing to work through to be transparent. And so I think it's a pretty cool, inspiring conversation for anyone listening about, how you can have an honest look at yourself, pull your socks up and do some work to feel better about yourself, right? So before we jump off and do that, Tim, do you want to just introduce yourself, who you are, a bit about you?
Of course. Well, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, Luke. Really enjoying working with you. My name's Tim Wright. I'm 44. I'm actually 45 tomorrow.
Happy birthday tomorrow.
Week. Cheers. Thanks very much. I'm married. I've got a 3-year-old daughter who's, wonderful and a terror. I'm a partner at an international law firm. My wife is also a lawyer. We live in London, but we actually lived in the Caribbean for nearly 8 years. We moved back to London last summer. So I swapped the Caribbean for the Central Line, which some might say was a bit.
It's a bit of a step change, right?
Life decision. Don't regret it at all, but it has been a bit difficult getting back into London life, which can be challenging even at the best of times, as I know you know, Luke. So that's my background. I'm speaking to you from Paris. I'm here for a couple of days to have a little break, which I think is well earned after all the hard work we put in.
For sure, and also birthday celebrating midlife, right? 45. It's a big one.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, look, let's jump off the conversation then. And I think the best place to start as any is sort of rewinding from when we first spoke. There's probably a bit more behind that, and we can discuss that. So yeah. I think you'd seen a few of my bits on LinkedIn as the usual story, decided to reach out for a conversation. We had a chat and obviously decided to do some work.
Yeah.
What was going off with you back then that made you think, you know what, I want to make some changes. I want to reach out and talk to someone like me, a coach, about doing some work for yourself?
Yeah, well, I'll rewind slightly further, if you don't mind, back to January
sure.
this year, because I think, like everyone, I made my New Year's resolutions. I was really keen to pull my socks up, get fit, and sort out my mental health a bit more. I'm a very positive, bouncy person, but I do suffer from a bit of depression and anxiety at times. The clouds loom, and I did what everyone does, which is to join a gym. I actually joined a nice gym because I could take my daughter swimming on a Saturday, but I got a really good PT who I stuck with, but it didn't solve my problems. I was doing a really good gym workout once a week, but not sorting my diet out. I also tried using BetterHelp, chatting to a therapist, which was helpful. And, there are times when that is necessary. But what I needed was action. Talking only goes so far. And I came across your post, Luke, just before I went on holiday in July. I really needed a holiday. That feeling. Went on a family holiday. Family holiday is perhaps an oxymoron, but a family holiday to France with my wife and daughter to an all-inclusive resort in France. Had a wonderful time, but I came back and I had ballooned in weight. I just, full English breakfast, pancakes for lunch, everything. And far from feeling energized and good to go, I felt absolutely terrible. And it was about that time I was sort of looking for I needed a project. I wanted to work with somebody. I'd realised that I was, needed to do something, and that perhaps taking small incremental steps rather than do extreme measures was probably the answer. Like at about the time I started chatting to you, I was also chatting to a charity about doing the London Marathon, this coming year, and that's the extreme thing to do.
Yeah.
And actually, I binned that off and signed up with you instead, which I think was a good move. So we had a couple of chats. I think early September was the first time I'd spoken to you. I was already doing quite well. I'd started walking each day. I was keeping up my personal training, but although I was doing well on my own, there was very little accountability, and I'm prone to just sacking it off and losing momentum. So I was looking for the sort of thing that you offer, and your posts on LinkedIn that that kept popping up. The algorithm is well.
Yeah, I think, yeah, for sure.
This is me. I'm in my mid-40s. I'm knackered. I am just about holding it together. Work's being is challenging. I need energy for that. I've got a daughter. I need energy for that, and I'm just not managing particularly well. And I dropped you a line, and I was really, really pleased that I did, because we cracked on from there.
Yeah, and fair play for being honest with where you're at as well, Tim, because what you're describing, I mean, I probably work in an echo chamber to some degree, but I think it's incredibly common. There's lots of guys out there who it's all pretty decent on paper, like decent job, lovely missus, one or many kids, all the trappings of the life that you want, but just not quite really feeling what you want. Constantly knackered, energy's low, not always, but a lot of the time, health not where you wanted to be, weight and whatnot as well. And this background level, it's all right, but just not really feeling like you're smashing it, right? And that's not to say I don't think that life should feel like you're peaking constantly, because that's not how life works. We have stressful situations all the time. But I think if you're feeling resilient within that and confident and energized and like, right, let's go, I think bringing that kind of energy to your life is great. And I think more often than not, the gents I work with, it's just like life just gone splat and you're like, fuck, it's like pushing a boulder up a hill, right?
Exactly right, Luke. I think that's a fair description. Everything's great on paper. I've got a great job, a lovely wife, a daughter, a lovely house in London, a nice car. Everything's cracking. My health wasn't too bad, and I wasn't in the depths of depression. I'm not clinically depressed, I don't think. But I ballooned in weight, and I wasn't happy, and lost confidence. Actually, I'm a very confident person, but I put a lot of work into getting to being confident. And sometimes when I'm just stressed and tired and pushing that boulder up the hill, my confidence goes. I feel the imposter syndrome seeping in, and it was a time of year where I really needed to up my game with work and get out and sell. The market's slow. I need to get out and do my sales and marketing, and that was quite daunting for me. So I needed to turn the corner.
Yeah, there's a few bits there. It's something that I use in my content. I've said before. You were like, it wasn't like I was clinically depressed, but it's like, well, if that's the bar, like, I'm not being a prick here, by the way. I'm just saying, like, not being depressed. I think, like, surely we want to feel better and more, within life. And I think you're right, Tim. Even from my first conversation, outwardly confident, fun, glasses half full. That's the vibe I got, and I know you a lot better now anyway. But even when I first met you, I got that kind of impression. But I think we discussed, you're putting that on, but I don't always feel it. And so there's a misalignment between, okay, I am glass half full, I'm going to go out and get these deals done, you will, but you're having to overexert because you're not really feeling as good in yourself, right? Both physically and mentally. And so that's also where I think that perpetual lack of energy comes, because you're having to overexert to hit what is a baseline, right? Whereas actually, if you're aligned, you're like, oh, I'm good, I am what I say. Does that make sense?
Makes complete sense. I would overexert getting out, walking the streets of London, selling my wares, as partner of law firms need to do. But then I'd be absolutely shattered. I'd get home and I wouldn't have enough energy for my daughter to hang out with her in the evening. And the other way was, if I put a lot of energy into my family and being a good dad, I'd hit Monday morning and be like, oh my God, I've got all these meetings this week. And I don't know. And I just needed to raise my energy levels generally.
Yeah.
Board.
Yeah. And I think that's the dichotomy with the gents I work with. The gent I spoke to yesterday, he's signed up. And he's like, I hear it on your podcast that, this, I ain't got enough time. And everyone says, oh, yeah, it's an excuse. He's like, well, I genuinely haven't got enough time. I was like, no, I know. And I like, it seems like a platitude for me to sit here and say, we will be able to find it. But it's not like I can, or the energy, right, to have that time. It's not like we can just pull it out of the ether. But if we start to look at things in a different way, you recognize there is more you can do to empower yourself to feel better in these scenarios and situations. Like there's like a video I did about the other day about work-life balance. And I think for me, it's not about time, really. That's the wrong way to look at it. Because the reality is the work that you do, that I do, most of us do, the time spent is always going to be more aligned with work. It just is, right? But if that time is energized, focused, you're feeling confident, you're aligned like we're talking about, and then you walk to the door at home when you're energized, focused, confident, giving your family what you need, you will feel in balance. Yes, of course, elapsed clock time will be skewed towards work, but then I don't think that massively matters, because then you get the best out of both scenarios, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, look, there's 24 hours in a day. We've all got the same amount of time, but we have different pressures. And I think when you have children and, you become a business owner or a partner of a law firm, you realize how much time you had when you were in your 20s. You could do whatever the hell you liked, and life is different now. But now it's about making use of that time and using it efficiently. And what I've been doing a lot better over the last few weeks, working with you and the habits that you've helped install, is if I've got a spare half an hour, I'm making the most of it. I'm not just doom scrolling on my phone. I'm going for a walk. I'm doing something mindful, or I'm spending, a nice half an hour playing with my daughter, rather than I don't know what, just sort of, sitting there spaced out, a little bit depressed while she watches telly. I'm on the floor playing with her instead.
Yeah, and ultimately that's more rewarding, and you feel happier and better about yourself, right? Because when you do the I don't just mean you, Tim, all of us, the starfish on the sofa there watching telly, and you sort of know it's not great.
Yeah,
Like you again, that you see all that, like, and you know what you're not doing, and that feels bad. It's almost you get this negative feedback loop. Whereas what you just described there, where you're like, oh, I've got half an hour, right? We're going to play, we're going to do something fun. Just a
exactly.
different energy and a different space to be in.
Yeah.
I think that's quite a nice segue to sort of fast forward into like where we are today. Like transparency, we're still working together, and there's more cool stuff we're going to work on. You know, I'm still working on myself. Like no one's a finished article, right? But we've done a lot of cool work in a relatively short space of time. So, as we sit today, then Tim, versus where you were, what have been your key takeaways and learnings, and I guess what have you achieved having come through this process so far?
Yeah, well, I've achieved a lot looking back over the last 8 weeks. I'm in more control of my life. I'm more disciplined, and I'm more accountable to myself, but also to you and the group you work with. The great thing about how you work, Luke, is that we have a group calls with other guys in my situation, and we share our stories. And it can be quite a lonely place when you're feeling as I was earlier the year, and you suddenly have these calls with guys who run businesses, have children, do all the stuff, and it's like, oh god, everyone else is going through this too, and we can help
Mm.
each other get through it. And in terms of the habits and sort of steps we've made, installing a really good morning routine, kicking off the day in a positive way has been huge to me. Rather than just I'm the kind of the guy that will look at my work emails at 4 o'clock in the morning when I when I wake up, and I've changed that due to some of the digital detox stuff we're doing. But also in the morning, I'm spending a bit more time with my daughter, and I'm getting some exercise done. I'm thinking about what I'm doing. I've improved my nutrition, and I'm kicking off the day in a positive way, and it follows through for the rest of the day, rather than rolling out of bed a bit grumpy, tired, having snoozed, having drunk a bottle of wine the night before. I'm drinking alcohol only once a week at the moment, and that's been a real pillar, a foundation of what we've been doing. I did drink too much, but not in a binge drinky kind of way.
Mm.
Sort of 2, 3 glasses of red wine every evening to take the edge off things, and there's nothing wrong with that from time to time. I still do it a bit, but I was doing it every evening after work, and it meant that I'd sleep badly. I'd wake up late. I wouldn't do any exercise. I'd be grumpy. Wouldn't be a great father and husband in the morning, and I'd roll into my first business meeting feeling sluggish. And that cloud has massively lifted, and it's been a huge step forward for me.
I think again, there's a few things there. The alcohol one is a powerful one and an interesting one because when we look at it, like the way I like to think about it is that uh, technically it's not the problem; it is the problem, right? Of course, it can be like even 2 or 3 glasses of wine that will mean poor sleep, you're foggy in the morning, maybe get up a bit late. So it will have a physiological impact, and there's the health implications. Even if it's not 2 liters of wine, it's still it's still alcohol, right? And that will have an impact. I think also more so though is what is that masking in the first place?
Yeah,
Because if you need that 2 or 3 glasses of wine to go, decompress, that highlights to me that there's things elsewhere that aren't set up or serving you that require you to do that bit, right? And so not only does that compounded every day chronically have an impact, we're also probably trying to mask or smooth over something that's not quite working in the first place. And so if we take that out and address that, then all of a sudden you can be a morning person. You can do things in your morning that serve you. You don't need to be on your phone at 4 a.m. because it's not going to serve you, all that stuff. And so like if you want to do that evening, you can. There's no judgment from me, but equally, don't be surprised at how your day goes the next day, right? And so it's like all these things have an impact. But I think the thing is often, although it sounds obvious when you point it out, when you're stuck in those loops, sometimes you just can't see it. And you
yeah.
go, hold on a second. And I just said to guys, well, just as an experiment, why don't you try it for a couple of nights, see what it feels like. Oh my God, I feel amazing. It's like, yeah. And as you know, I'm not here to push the bright on anyone. And that's something that I do for different reasons, different podcasts for a different day. But like for most people, I think most people can have a healthy balance around booze, but doing it for fun night out with the missus, date night, a couple of beers with the mates, like that's the fun thing, right? Not because you had a shit day or a good day or you just need to sort of switch off. I don't think that's the right use for it, right?
Exactly right. Look, I'm speaking to you from Paris. I'm having a little holiday, and I think previously, even a few weeks ago, I would have really gone for it on this trip because I would have needed to. I would have needed a blowout. We were joking before that I look a little bit like Henry VIII, and Henry VIII is my he's my when we were doing our Carl Jung
Yeah.
shadow analysis, which is something really interesting you do in Luke's course. I think probably Henry VIII is my shadow with his vices and the big fat angry Henry after his jousting accident. He got himself in trouble when he came to France. He'd come here and spend
Yes.
lots of money and start wars and drink liters of red wine. And I felt I was actually a bit worried earlier this week that I was going to come here and have a real blowout, but I didn't need to because I'm happy at the moment. I've barely drunk on this trip. I went to the football last night and I had one glass of wine when I got back to my hotel. I got up this morning and went to the gym and did a bit of light cardio, and it's just huge. And I think it's because something has changed. My brain has slightly been reprogrammed, but I'm just happier and more content and more in control.
I think I've spoken about this before when guys in the program, they go on holidays or we have fun events and there's Christmas, right? And so it's not about being a monk, and nor is it about having one rigid way to behave, because that's inflexible. Like, having a perfect routine is as fragile as having fuck all, as far as I'm concerned, right? So it needs to be flexible and malleable. So when you go away, you're going to indulge, right? But if you're materially feeling better about yourself within your life, just generally, you don't need that pendulum swing of let's go fucking bananas, like all bets are off, be that with food or alcohol or whatever, right? It's like, yeah, I want to, go watch football, have a glass or two of wine and enjoy myself, but you don't need to get blottoed to sort of almost quote unquote take the edge off or decompress. It's like, I'm feeling pretty good anyway. And so it allows you to moderate, but not from a place of like, I'm being a monk, or fuck you, Luke, I'm in a program, I'm going to do it, I can't wait to get smashed again. It's quite the opposite. No, no, I'm not here. If you went, I got battered in Paris, would go, fair play, to enjoy yourself. like,
Yeah, yeah.
like it's not as a coach, it's not really my job to do that, but it's about to help you think about your place. What you've said there is a conscious choice you've made, and it's intentional, right? That's the
Exactly,
thing.
and I think you said to me earlier in the week, go to Paris and enjoy yourself, and you can be a man at night, be a man in the morning, get up and
Yeah,
shut off, do what you need to do to feel better. But and I was expecting I might do that, but I just didn't want to, and that's really telling.
yeah. And what's great is that it's almost that sort of happened as an emergent property, not like super like I must not drink. It's like, no, I'm gonna go to football, do it. I was like, okay,
Yeah,
didn't really need to. It's great, right? Um, You've also lost a good chunk of change, right? Weight wise, like,
yeah,
I mean, and you were already on that journey when we started, but like you've lost even more, right? And as I always say, I think weight isn't the only thing, and not everyone in the program, as you know, is there to lose weight.
yeah.
But I think for a lot of us, getting a handle on how you look and feel physically has a big bearing on all sorts of stuff, especially your mental health as well. How are you feeling in terms of like being lighter and leaner?
I'm feeling much better. Look, I don't want to fat shame myself, but earlier this year I just felt terrible. I ballooned in weight to, my sort of level of acceptable weight had just kept creeping up over the years. I'd have a like, right, I hit X kilos and I need to like sort my shit out, and it's just kept
Yeah,
going up a little bit, as did my shirt sizes. And yeah, before we kicked off, I'd started a bit of a journey. I was walking each day, but I also, because you know what, I got a quote for private health insurance, which was mind blowing, because I had my weight, I was weighed, my cholesterol level was high, and it's expensive, and I was like, oh my god, I need to do something. So I'm talking very openly about this, but I've been using GLP-1s. I signed up
nice.
for a Mounjaro prescription back in August, and it's been an absolute game changer for me. It's helped me do all the good stuff. I describe it like I was steering on a car.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It makes it easier to fast, easier to diet. Look, I'm still eating healthily and I'm eating plenty of food, but it's making it easier to drink less. And I'm not getting these, like, it regulates your blood sugar level, and I'm not getting these cravings to smash a Domino's pizza every evening as I used to. That sort of thing. It's been very useful, and I think that guys are beginning to talk about it a bit more. I've got so many friends. A couple of male friends in particular who we danced around the subject in conversations. Was like, mate, you're looking great. What have you been doing? It's like, intermittent fasting. I've got a new PT, blah blah blah. And then after about half an hour, like, mate, I'm on Mounjaro. So am I. And it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. And I think it's not accessible to all. It's quite expensive, but I'm lucky enough to be able to afford it. And it just seemed like it was properly prescribed by a doctor. I just thought, why not give it a go? And it's been absolutely brilliant. And I'm not on a high dose. Going to keep it ticking over for a while. But I was really keen to get on it, but with gym and training
Yeah.
and exercise
And
and diet, and not just rely on it, you know.
yeah,
Right.
the appropriate behaviour change. I mean, we've discussed this a few times, Tim, like offline and between me and you, and like, you know, you asked me my take on it, and I think they're amazing, powerful drugs. I think they're wonderful, and they help millions of people. Uh, the where they get a bad press, I think, is when someone will take one, they will lose a chunk of weight, but they
Yeah,
don't address any of the fundamental behaviours that were
exactly.
making them unhealthy in the first place, and so. That's where you get things like, you know, muscle wastage, sarcopenia, some of those other issues. And of course, like any drug, it will have side effects, but they're pretty well tolerated and pretty safe for most people. And most people, they're almost like wonder drugs, right?
Yeah,
So I think used in conjunction with appropriate behavior change, all the stuff that we do, it'll just help power up all of that. And for some people, they find it difficult in terms, especially the weight piece and some of these habits, find it harder. And it just takes away that food noise and makes it a bit easier. So, like, if you can afford it, it's an absolute no brainer. It's
definitely.
safe, it's healthy. And so I'm all for it. I've got several clients that take them. I've got lots of clients that don't. My take is if it helps and it works, you know, fill your boots, go for it. I think they're very sensible, healthy things to use. You know.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I've never found it easy to lose weight, even when I was a teenager. You know, I was that slightly chubby teenager, and I started playing a lot of football and rugby, and partly, partly to get in shape. You know, and kept that up in my 20s. But you know, typically fell off the cliff a bit on the exercise front, and it's been a battle ever since. So it's a nice sort of addition to the toolkit, I'd say.
Totally. And in the coaching fitness space, you know, I'm not really a fitness coach. It's more holistic performance, life coach, whatever you want to call it. I don't really know what label I give myself, to be honest. But there, especially in the more fitness, nutrition sort of area, there's quite a lot of people that are very much anti it. No, you do it yourself. And I just think that's nonsense. I think the sort of coaches that say that probably have never really experienced how hard it genuinely is for some people. And for some people, it can be literally like life changing. I've got other clients, slightly different, a different sort of parallel, but I have other clients who are ADHD and have been diagnosed ADHD, and then they've been medicated whilst we're working together, and they're like, bing, it's just like, they said they can't describe how different they feel when they're medicated and it works. It's like a different brain stem.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
do things you can do. And I've heard the same thing with GLPs and stuff. People that have struggled for years and years and years, they take this medication, it just makes it, oh, I can do it. And so why not help and liberate people with stuff like that? I just think it's a sensible thing. So I'm quite passionate about it being a good idea. Not everyone needs them, of course, but if you do and it helps, you know, I think it's a good thing for sure.
yeah, definitely. And you know, I've realised again that you know you can joke about the dad bod in your 40s and say, "Oh, I'm
Toxic.
busy," and I've got it's bollocks, isn't it? Like you know, I feel much better when I'm you know in shape and my clothes fit in the morning. There's nothing more frustrating than trying to put your suit on for a
No.
business meeting and it's tight around the waist. You don't feel comfortable. You don't feel confident. I hate that feeling. I remember putting on a suit to go to court earlier this year, and just it messed me up. My confidence fell away, and you know it's it, it's important to feel good about yourself.
Well, for me, the dad bod thing, I think it's that whole toxic compassion, which is it's normalizing and making something that's not okay okay. And people get butthurt or confused by this. Like, you can be a good person, a great dad, a great coach, a great lawyer, and be overweight and look crap in a suit. 100%, right? It's not a judgment on your character. It's got fuck all to do with it, though. If that's impacting your health, your energy, you're not showing up, your confidence is low, all the things that everyone actually says once you dig into it, that's not right. And using a label as a dad bod is almost like making it acceptable. It's like, no, there's no judgment from you for how you look. I don't give a fuck, right? It's about how you feel. And if you're not feeling good, your energy is low, and you feel like you're letting yourself down, that's what's important. It's nothing to do with society. And so saying, oh, it's okay, or the dad bod, for me, it almost just like it kind of gives you that sort of pass, but all it does is make you feel worse, in my opinion. As you can probably gather, I'm quite passionate about that, but I
Yeah,
don't think it's the
definitely.
right
I mean,
thing.
look, let's be honest. If I could weigh 115 kilos, be that heavy and eat shit and still feel good and have all the energy to do that I need to do that we discussed earlier, then
Fine.
maybe, and I'm healthy and my cholesterol isn't high, then
Yeah.
that's fine. But it wasn't. It wasn't.
None of those things are true, though, are they? That's the thing. That's the reality. Yeah. And so I think it's more about being empowered to feel and look as you want to, but not using a label to kind of excuse it. You know, another gent on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, it was Mark. He was talking about, you know, this sort of this self-deprecating, like, you know, moan about your family and your wife over pints in the pub, and you
Yeah,
joke about a dad bod. It's not. I don't believe that's the life most of us want, right? And so it's quite a British way of behaving that, you wallow in the sort of pity, but actually I want to be excited and love my wife and be passionate about my kids and feel energized and look healthy and fit and good. I think that we all want that, really, don't we? I don't think that's a bad thing to want and talk about.
That really resonated, that bit in that podcast. I thought that is bang on, because often when you're feeling a bit sluggish and tired, and it's really important to go and socialize with your mates,
100%.
but it's often the only way as guys we do it. We'll go and we won't talk about anything. We won't talk about the fact that we're on Mount Jaro. We'll talk about
And make a positive change.
we'll talk about, have a whinge about life, and have a few jokes, keep everything at arm's length, arm's distance, and this is the refreshing thing about the group that we have, the WhatsApp group, because actually talking about things like that with strangers who you get closer to allows you to open up a bit more and share things that you wouldn't share perhaps even with close friends. In fact, you wouldn't share specifically with close friends.
Yeah, and that's what I hear a lot in the group. Is often some of the guys say, "I would never have said any of this stuff to someone else," but there's almost power in it being a stranger. But also, all those other people. We're all on that journey together. And by the way, I don't want this to sound like we're all these like preachy wankers. No. We're always all fucking up and learning and getting it wrong, and that's part of the point, right? And so, but just being engaged in a process where you're willing to be open, that word vulnerable, and talk about it, be honest, and then, like you said, looping right back to the start, right? What are we going to do about it? Because the other thing I think there's this trope in like men's mental health at the moment that men need to talk. Yeah, we do, but we need fucking action off the back of that as well. And that's the bit that's missing a lot of the time. Men like to build and fix and create, right? And how we actually bond, I think, is through problem solving and fixing, right? And so it's great to talk, but that doesn't do an awful lot. You want to talk and then work out, well, what do I do with what I've just talked about? And I think that for me, it's putting both those pieces together, right?
Bang on, absolutely. And I said earlier that I did a couple of sessions using BetterHelp, spoke to a therapist who was really useful, and he said to me, "Oh, perhaps you don't really need therapy at the moment." I was like, "Well, maybe I don't." But we talked about stuff that was going on, and we just did a lot of talking. And I need action. I'm a man of action. And when we first spoke, I was like, right, I need a plan. I need to I need to sort this out. Help me, please. You need to crack on. And I'm prone to, I spend too much time in my brain. I'm a lawyer. I sit at a desk. I overthink things dramatically. And some problems are just better solved by getting out and about and busy. Just get up, just do it. Think
Totally.
while you're going for a walk rather than think while you're sitting at a desk, get your body moving. I think the correlation between the holistic side of everything you do, your body and mind are so intertwined. I think we sometimes forget that.
Yeah, and especially for those of us that work in knowledge work, and most of my clients are kind of that kind of space, um, you sort of want to outthink all of your problems. And of course, you need cerebral horsepower to do that sometimes. But a lot of the time, like, we forget that these two things are kind of inextricably linked. And sometimes to help solve a problem is just like, get out your head, get into your body, go for a walk, clear your head, and all of a sudden life will look better. Right? Some really simple things can have a very big impact. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, Tim. So we'll start to wrap up because I want you to enjoy Paris and not just
Thank
spend
you.
the morning talking to me. Couple of questions. First one, I guess, for anyone listening, like, we're still relatively early days in your personal development journey, what we're working on, and we're continuing to do some work, right, which is great. What would you say has been your kind of key takeaway from the process so far that you'd learned?
A key takeaway is definitely the need for accountability. And I knew that already, but just don't try and do it on your own, because you might get so far, but there is help available out there, whether it's with you, Luke, or somebody else. But joining a group and having that sort of group mentality. And look, yesterday morning, I was in Paris having a nice time. I really couldn't be bothered to go to the gym and do a bit of exercise, but I knew I wanted to, and I beat myself up if I hadn't. And one of your chaps had done an amazing post in the WhatsApp group about his transformative year. I looked at that and I was like, get out of bed, mate. Go to the gym. I just did 40 minutes on the treadmill, bit of walking, bit of running, and I felt brilliant afterwards. I felt so proud of myself. And so it's that accountability. And then I posted it on the WhatsApp group and said, lads, I did it. And that was great. And I think that's been the most important thing for me.
Yeah, and that external accountability then helps you breed self-accountability, right? And the two things become hand in hand. And the other part of that kind of accountability, or the way I think about accountability, is it's not like we just said there about you going off into Paris. It's not just shouting at you to do stuff. It's empowering you to become accountable to yourself. And that's, I believe you do that. Well, if something's not worked or you haven't done the workout, you didn't do the workout this morning, not Tim, you piece of shit. Why? I was tired. Why? But I was late and went watched PSG and I had a bottle of wine. No, you didn't.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
yeah,
there's a valid reason there. Well, you're on holiday. Fair enough. If that's every single night, maybe we need to address that. See what I mean? And so it's just, but then we start to get to the root of problems, and then you become accountable to yourself because you know what you're doing, right? And so I think it's important to have that part of it as well, because of course the external part helps, but at some point you want it to be self-generated as well, right? And it's putting those two pieces together.
exactly right. Bang on. Yeah, yeah.
So I guess the final thing I wanted to ask was, and it's I guess important for anyone listening who maybe in the sort of position you're in, like let's rewind, a few months into the past, or even at the start of January, we're getting up to January now as well.
Yeah.
Maybe feeling like you were, it's all great on paper, not as happy, content, in that kind of headspace, a bit like lost as to what to do. And regardless of whether it's to work with me or not, Tim, just generally, what would you say to someone in that kind of headspace if they're feeling like you were back then?
Do something. Take control. Take responsibility. There are plenty of options out there, and this is a great option, by the way. But don't try and do it alone. And I think just you need to have a look in the mirror and be kind of honest with yourself, and that's quite a hard thing to do. But try it. I think perhaps with my 45th birthday coming up, I started thinking about life a bit more. My parents were also getting elderly, and I was thinking about what kind of 70, 80-year-old would I like to be in the future, and kind of looking back. And at this time of life, you have the chance uh, to make decisions that will help you in the future. You'll look back and you'll be really pleased if you've made the right decision. Look, life is brutal. Life is short. You can be really unlucky and terrible things can happen, but don't put it all into the realms of luck, because sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're unlucky. And, if you've been unlucky, you look back and say, well, at least I tried my best. And if you just sit back, ignore the obvious, and don't take any steps to look after yourself and address serious things such as your health and your mental health, mental health is perhaps more important than your physical health, but they are intertwined, then a disaster is brewing. And I would say just don't wait until you hit the iceberg. It's better to do things while you are actually energized enough to take responsibility and grasp projects like this, rather than being completely reactive because you've been floored by illness or disease or something really, really shit happening in your life, and you're picking yourself up the floor. Just do it now. Get on with it, and don't wait till January. It's the 27th of November. You can still enjoy December. You can still enjoy Christmas with doing a course like this. Just get on with it. You will feel more shit in January if you don't start now. For sure.
Well, I was going to try and do this because somebody wrap it up, but I'm not going to, because what you just said there, I agree with all of it and absolutely bang on. And I don't mean in terms of working with a coach like me. I mean just generally the concept of now is the time. The best time to start was yesterday. If you think you've got a problem, you've got a problem. Like if nothing changes, nothing changes. I'm just going to say all the sort of the cliched phrases, but it's all true, right? And so, like there's a gent I spoke to the other day, got an email off him. He was like, "Oh, you know what? I'm just going to wait until March." And I was just like, "What?" Like, what's that about? Fair enough. I mean, that's his decision. But it's kind of the antithesis of like, what's going to happen between now and March to fix all the stuff we discussed? Well, not an awful lot. But and for me, that's the thing. It's like the time in the future that you think is going to come when it's all going to be all right does not exist.
Well, we all hope the future's going to be better and tomorrow's going to be a brighter day, but it isn't always. Today actually might, on reflection, be really bright and breezy and the best you've had. So just get on with it.
Yeah, and ultimately, again, another cliche phrase, you've only got now. And so if you can feel happy and content now and do things to change now, then you feel better. Tim, you're a legend. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know anyone watching and listening will get a lot out of it. I definitely have. I love talking to you. I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I won't do that. If anyone is listening and they're interested in about talking to me about how I can help, anything like that, drop me a note in the comments or ping me a DM. Tim, of course, I will see you next week anyway because we're working together, but everyone else, we'll see you next week. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Been a pleasure. Thanks.